Hello and welcome to Guitar Center Sessions. I'm Jason Bentley, coming to you live from the Vintage Room at Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. We have a very special session for you today, and I do hope you enjoy this. This man needs no introduction, but I will try. Rock icon, humanitarian, champion of human rights, musician, and songwriter. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Peter Gabriel.
So we're going to start with one maybe appropriate for the Vintage Room, but it's quite old, and it goes like this. When the night shows, the signals grow on radios. All the strange things, they come and go as early warnings. Stranded starfish have no place to hide, still waiting for the swollen Easter tide. There's no point in direction, we cannot even choose a side. I took the old track, the hollow shoulder across the waters. On the tall cliffs, they were getting older, sons and daughters. The jaded underworld was riding high. Waves of steel hurled metal at the sky. And as the nails sunk in the cloud, the rain was warm and soaked the crowd. Lo, here comes the flood. We'll say goodbye to flesh and blood. If again the seas are silent in any still alive, it'll be those who gave their island to survive. Drink up, dreamers, you're running dry. When the flood calls, you have no home, you have no walls. In the thunder crash, you're 1,000 miles within a flash. Don't be afraid to cry what you see. The actor's gone, there's only you and me. And if we break before the dawn, they'll use up what we used to be. Lord, here comes the flood. We'll say goodbye to flesh and blood. If again the seas are silent in any still alive, it'll be those who gave their island to survive. Drink up, dreamers, you're running dry.
Peter Gabriel, thank you for joining us today at Guitar Center. Scratch My Back is your latest project, the new album. It consists of cover songs, and I wonder how you ultimately chose these songs.
Well, it's a good question, and we went through an awful lot of them. And I think it was partly, well, things that I loved or cared about, and then I was trying to mix it up a little bit, and my daughter's just Anna, who lives in New York, knows Regina Spektor, introduced me there. Melanie, my younger daughter, introduced me to Bon Iver. Dickie, my engineer, who's here, he was always pushing a few things, but Arcade Fire was one of them, and I was aware of them, but I hadn't really listened properly, and fell in love with it. And I just felt like some of the songs were things that I could live inside and do my own thing with. And then, of course, the other part of that was, the other conception was just to see if we could get the I'll Scratch Yours. So it had to be living artists that were willing to play.
Do you think it's possible for other people's songs to be more meaningful and more significant than your own material?
Yeah, some people have written great songs, and some of it a lot better than my stuff, but it's, you know, you each work away your own vein, and you do it with a certain voice, but I think, you know, it allows you to move beyond your own boundaries, and that I find interesting. And I have a real passion for songwriting. When I wasn't trying to be a drummer as a young man, I was trying to learn about songs, and I still have that passion. In fact, we want to try and get a sort of songwriting festival together, which under the name Hum, and you'd put sort of the Sherman Brothers singing whatever it is, Mary Poppins, or some of their Disney Jungle Book classic songs alongside Nine Inch Nails, and you'd say, you know, this is all songwriting, and there's a craft here which is common to all genres, and just try and encourage musicians, and young musicians especially, just to delve into it, because there's so much to learn. And I think I've learned a lot from doing other people's songs. You know, and a lot of us start doing covers because that's the only way we'll get paid. And but then, you know, I think at this point in my life I'm exploring it because I'm interested as a songwriter.
There is a heaviness to this record.
Yeah.
You know, and take the Paul Simon song, for instance. The original version of Boy in the Bubble is very up, but you strip it down and reveal the lyric in a very different way, and it has this real heaviness in its sparseness.
Yeah, no, we squeeze all the joy and African music right out of it. And reveal, you know, another miserable white person's lyric. And, but I think it's one of the best lyrics written in the last 20 years. I think it's extraordinary. You know, a lot of people have said, well, they hadn't really taken in how good that lyric was until they heard it stripped back. It's wonderful, the way he moves around from constellations to the sort of details and medical discoveries. And in fact, there's this sort of terrorism element. I mean, it seemed that love, sex, terrorism, and death seemed to be recurrent themes, but that certainly wasn't planned that way.
What were some of the challenges in reimagining these songs, and even what was the most challenging song to arrange for orchestra?
Well, it varied a lot, and I mean, John did the lion's share of the arrangements. Some things entirely, and others, you know, I would get my hands in and throw in a lot of notes, and sometimes just sort of rhythms or ideas. But it was, it's his genius, I think, that has shaped the arrangements. And sometimes, you know, I would encourage him. Something like In the Cage, My Body as a Cage, sorry, the Arcade Fire track was sort of smaller and polite, and, you know, we pushed it out, because I think the idea with this one was just to go the whole way wherever possible. And I'm just trying to think. I think Listening Wind probably went through the most incarnations. and Mirrorball was the toughest one for me to sing, for which I managed to thank Guy Garvey. But it was an evolving process. Some just sort of fell out fairly effortlessly, and others had to be worked hard.
Another person you worked with on this record is Bob Ezrin.
Yep.
And Bob is someone you've known for many years. He worked with you on your very first solo album.
Sure.
So your relationship goes back over 30 years.
Yeah, I've known him a long time, and in fact, we started off, you know, with Dickie, John, and I, and we did about 3 or 4 of the arrangements, and then suddenly got the feeling, this is a much bigger project than we anticipated. Maybe we need some reinforcements. And I worked with Bob on the, I think what Randy Newman called the Pig film, which is, you know, one of the babes, and I did a song called Battle Do of Randy's, and Bob worked on that and did a wonderful job with the orchestra, and it just reminded me, you know, how good he is in a room with a large number of talented but strong idiosyncratic players, and he gave us great feedback on the arrangements and was really helpful in the studio. He was working on other projects, so we get him for sort of short bursts, but it was very helpful. So a few years back, I realized my dad was getting on. He's still around, he's 98 now, and I didn't know him as well as I could, so he's been doing yoga for 50 years or so, so we went off, just the 2 of us and a yoga instructor. And we did a lot of these stretches where you get one person using the other person's body weight, and so it was more physical contact that I had with my dad than I'd have for many years previously, and it was a very strong experience for me, and this came out as a result. It's called Father and Son.
Father, Son, locked as one in this empty room, spine against spine, yours against mine, till the warmth comes through. Remember the breakwaters down by the sea. First found my courage, knowing Daddy could save. I could hold back the tide with my dad by my side. Dogs, plows, and bows, we moved through each pose, struggling in our separate ways. Mantras and hymns, unfolding limbs, looking for release through the pain. And the yogi's eyes are open, looking up above. He too is dreaming of his daddy's love, with his dad by his side. Got his dad by his side. Can you recall how you took me to school? We couldn't talk much at all. It's been so many years, and now these tears. Guess I'm still your child. Out on the moors, we take a pause, see how far we have come. You You're moving quite slow. How far can we go? Father and son. With my dad by my side, with my dad by my side, got my dad by my side, with me. With me.
I'm wondering, have you performed that song for your father?
I have. The tough gig is that he's asked me to perform it at his funeral, so that's going to be a difficult one. But no, I think he was very touched.
Tell us about Real World Studios in the West Country of England, because this is a magical place.
I was never very quick at making records, and so, you know, having paid for several studios in recording costs, it suddenly occurred to me, as it occurs to most musicians, that maybe I ought to get some set up that I can, you know, spend whatever time I want at home, or maybe just out of home, because that has its own set of tensions. But someone knows that, I think, yeah. And we built this place, you know, in a way that I'd always wanted to be, and most studios at that time were sort of cellars with disco lights, and it wasn't an environment that I found very easy or comfortable to work in. And so we made what I think is perhaps still the world's largest control room, so you could put a lot of musicians in the control room rather than just in the live room or in a recording booth. So they were, you said from the word go, you know, you're part of the process here. And although it makes life difficult for the engineers sometimes, and they curse me, there's a general sense there that it's a good space, and we have, you know, good acousticians who control the environment. We had lots of windows, daylight. We pointed the control room out at the water, because we're on the edge of a river. So we were looking at the swans and recently an otter, and rather than the irate drummer. No, but it was just so. We then tried to think about, you know, some of the world stuff that we were doing. We were getting musicians in from all over the world and trying to make them comfortable, trying to get the food right. And it's in the countryside, except it's right by the main London to Bristol railway line, which does sort of shoot through at high volume from time to time, and cost a lot more than I'd been anticipating to soundproof.
I'm sure there's been many, but are there any sessions that really stayed with you, that you were part of or just witnessed at Real World, that just felt magic?
I think there are many, many ones, but the recording of the Passion record sticks with me for lots of reasons. But one was that we had, where Yusu did some amazing stuff, and Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan was performing in the upstairs studio. And at the balcony, we had El Shankar, or I think he's calling himself a Shankar now, but he's just an extraordinary violinist. But effectively, it was, you know, India and Pakistan, two countries on the edge of war quite frequently, and just this sort of interaction between the two of them. It was just magic. And Nusrat was an extraordinary improviser and passionate singer. You know, for those people that don't know his work, sadly we lost him a few years back. But you know, in Pakistan he's sort of revered like Pavarotti in Italy, and rightly so.
Now, Peter, we're going to relocate and take some questions from the audience.
Sure. Bring the tea.
All right. Now, I know we have some music students in the audience today, so, all right.
Hi, my name is Vic. You've got a lot of songs that are very layered, very textured, have a lot of different elements into it, such as Sky Blue, which is one of my favorite songs of yours. When you go into the studio and record a song like that, do you go in there with all the elements and all the pieces already put together in your head, or is that more of an exploratory thing that comes out of the recording process?
I think working backwards, it's definitely an exploratory process. You know, and that's, I love diversions, and I keep on following them, which makes it a lot longer. But I can get very boring on this subject because I'm very interested in it. And I think the theory would go like this, that there are two forms of creative energy. One is energy A, which is sort of analytical energy, which you would get when you layer things up track by track, when you sort of zoom into things and really work on little details. And the other I call energy Z or Z, sort of Zen-like, which is a performance energy. It's spontaneous, it's improvised, and that will produce a different animal. Both are really useful and really important. So I think the SMART process is something that would harvest performance and analysis and be able to layer them up. So maybe initially you just look at rhythm, then maybe you look at melody and harmony, then timbre, and each time you put a layer of performance down, and then you slow it down and analyze. Anyway, as I said, I can get very boring on this, but I think it's a very good point, and musicians need to be aware of how they're working, and sometimes just flip it and do it the other way and see what happens, because they'll go a different way.
I'd love for you to talk a little more about what you're doing with the Elders Project, which you've described as creating a new ecosystem for change, but this is at a very high level. But tell us what you're doing with that.
Well, there was a dream that you know, as part of this alternative political system, you know, that there are some extraordinary, as our trust in institutions declines, our trust in some individuals is still pretty high, you know, and Mandela clearly had an awful lot of that. And I went to Richard Branson, and we tried to sell the idea to Mandela. It took a little while because he thought at first no one would want a bunch of, as he put it, old-timers sort of interfering, getting in the way. But then he referred back to a time when he'd negotiated with Hutus and Tutsis, and he had had some success, and the young generals from both sides said, oh, this is how we want to negotiate, because we don't trust anyone else. Everyone else has an agenda. We think this is like talking to a father who just wants to get things right. So eventually, yeah, he started it with us. He's not really active now, but and we have an amazing group with sort of Kofi Annan, Mary Robinson, Desmond Tutu's the chair, Ella Batt, President Carter, former President Cardoso of Brazil, Lakhdar Brahimi from Morocco, Gro Brundtland, who's really one of the first sort of environmental leaders. And it's just, you know, they're working a lot on conflict resolution, and I think there's you know, a growing number of people that think there is some type of organizing that could happen that could make a lot of these things much more effective.
Do we have time for another question?
When you songwrite, do you start with lyrics or melody or different sounds to be your inspiration for your songwriting? And also, with any songs that you've written, do you have any cool stories of your inspiration for those songs?
I think it varies a lot. And musically, you know, it's always been quite easy for me to find ideas that intrigue me. Lyrics, it's always been harder work. So sometimes, you know, I love rhythm too. So sometimes it'll be a rhythm that'll start something off, or a melody, and occasionally, like with "Here Comes the Flood," that came out fairly quickly, words and melody together, but that's a rarity for me. And I think it's good to, you know, take inspiration from all sorts of places. You know, I always think should be a bit like a dog in a park. You know, you sniff it, you follow it, you jump on it, and you know, that's how artists work.
What does it mean to you to be a global citizen?
Well, again, this is a passion for me because I think we are inevitably global citizens now, and in the very first time, it's the very first time in our evolution when any one person on the planet's surface pretty much can communicate with any other. You know, the digital divide is fast eroding. The mobile phone is sweeping through the developing world like nothing else. And as Muhammad Yunus says, this is the technology that is transforming poverty and all the world in many, many ways. So it's something that excites me because there's all sorts of things that make us aware that what our elected representatives do isn't going to make a damn of difference because it's a lot of countries and a lot of people that are being affected and have to act and think globally. You know, I'm a huge advocate of people traveling. You know, I would be very much against young people particularly staying at home because I have found that meeting people, playing music with people, connecting with people around the world opened me up in ways that I could not have predicted. And I think we have a much better chance of having a peaceful world if people are making one-to-one connections for whatever reason.
Well, Peter Gabriel, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining us today at Guitar Center.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was Peter Gabriel. Wow.